when I go back to the beginning, a large part of this started when I was working in the emergency department. I've been an emergency nurse for 10 years. And, I started noticing all the bottles and the plastic everywhere. And I would just like subtly pick it out of the garbage and I'd put it into the, just tuck them into the recycling bins. And at some point somebody was like, oh, this doesn't even get recycled. And I was like, yeah, but we have recycling bins. How's like obviously must get recycled. And all of a sudden, it kind of opened the door to this whole world that I really was quite ignorant to and had no idea about. And so I started researching a lot more and realizing, oh wow, yeah, none of this gets recycled, and we have all these bins everywhere. And what else doesn't get recycled? Where does this go? Where does that go? It just kind of opened up a can of worms. It's that old saying, once you know, you can't unknow. So, also, I ventured into my my graduate studies of public health. And so, during that time, I became a lot more conscious of what I was doing and what I was using every day. And the breaking point came when we ordered lunch one day, and we ended up getting a whole pack of forks and knives and napkins and bags. And, and all I thought was, oh man, like we didn't need any of this, they should ask us if we need it. And why do they want to waste money? Where does this stuff just goes to the trash? And, and so it really got me thinking, like, what's being done around here? Like, I understand that the world is a big place, but like, maybe I can do something locally. And because I didn't know anything that was going on. And, that led me to meet Michaela. Her and I were doing our graduate studies placement at the public health unit at the time. And, we started talking about, after hours, like about this, and came up with a game plan to start Plastic Free Greater Sudbury. And that, we put a lot of effort and work into that. But what happened was I started realizing that there was a gap between people being able to take action and actually having tools to take action with. And the tools part is what was missing. So people wanted to take action and do things, but didn't have the tools necessary to do it. Like they couldn't refill, they couldn't reduce the plastics. There's no way to do that, right? And so, they can make their own stuff, but like, even then they were at the mercy of like having to get all the ingredients and order them from, who knows where. And so, I saw this gap, and that's where the Nickel Refillery was born. So we just celebrated our first year anniversary on October the 5th. So we're officially a year in. Interestingly enough, 30 or more weeks of that have been within the pandemic. So, that's, we're all pretty happy about that. Yeah, that's probably the biggest challenge, because a big part of this movement locally here for us anyway, it's been meeting people where they're at, less than, and trying not to be radical, because sometimes, green movements can feel radical, even though, most of people that are living it and experiencing it realize it's not. It's a very, becomes a pretty simple way of life. But sometimes people who have never been exposed to it before or heard about it can feel like it's very radical compared to what they're used to, right? And so we take a very conscious approach to that, and very mindful approach to how we communicate, the changes and what we do. Because we want people to realize that it doesn't take a radical shift. And so that's pretty much our approach, is finding out what people do on their day-to-day and just trying to help them find ways to make that. Yeah, as an individual, I approach it largely as a mother as well, right? I have two young children. And, I haven't been able to go to a beach since I became more mindful of this issue and not see pieces of plastic. It doesn't take much. You really just need to take a good look in the sand, and it's all you'll see, and that's locally, and we talk about, in the news and stuff, you see it in it's in the oceans, it's in there, it's on there. That it's not hard. It's hard not to see it anymore, right? It's everywhere. So, but when you start to look locally and it's, and you notice that it's on all of your beaches, on all of the shorelines, on every cleanup you go to, like you can't get away from it. It becomes really difficult to not do something about it and to not care. I want my children to have a future with, an environment and a life that I've experienced, and so it's important that I take action to make sure that future is sustainable and going to be realized. Yeah. So I mean, I was raised in Terrace Bay, Ontario. So, I come from a much smaller town, and you know, I'm hard pressed to say that I'm actually pretty sure that there's only recycling, once a month, maybe increasing now. But compost is not a thing yet. It's, I'm hoping it's on the radar, but I think if I were to talk specifically about Northern Ontario, I think these things need to come into action. How are people supposed to do anything if they don't even have access to, composting or recycling? Like, it's almost impossible to limit your garbage then, right? Or your waste in general. They also, a lot of these northern communities, they live right beside bush lines and stuff, right? So animals are a problem, and so for people to have backyard stuff, it sometimes isn't realistic either.
Yeah.
So I'd love to see some refill stores open, more northern, but I think we're kind of the furthest north aside from Thunder Bay. Thunder Bay has something now, but what I'd like to see is just the government probably take more upstream action when it comes to preventing waste. What I see even locally a lot of the time is a lot of downstream thinking, things being done after the fact instead of being like, hey, let's support this group or let's support this business that's doing things to take preventative action or upstream action, to make things, help them achieve their goals, and that's what I'm not seeing. I'm not seeing a lot of that. So I'd love to see that more in the north, because we do see it down in the south a lot more. There's a lot more support, right, for these kind of movements. And so I think back I guess it was about 33 weeks now ago, when we made our first post to say, hey, okay, we're still operating, we're good. We've increased our cleaning procedures, we've added hand sanitizer, but then something it just kind of came to a halt all of a sudden when we were like, whoa, what are we doing, and how are we going to actually make this work when no one can bring reusables? Like, how is this going to work? So we hit pause, we closed for 2 weeks. We reevaluated. We also had a lot of volunteers in the store, right? So a lot of people, we had a lot of EEs, we call them, our energy exchange team members, and we had to reevaluate the whole thing. We had to say, is it fair to be asking people to come in right now who aren't being paid? And if we don't have that, do we have enough staff to maintain what we're doing? And how are we going to do it? So we really had to go to the drawing board and reinvent how we were doing things. So what that looked like was hitting pause and getting an online store going so that we could do curbside, because what we realized was it wasn't sustainable for us to have people coming in the store anymore with their own containers until we knew for sure what we were even dealing with, right? Back then, we didn't know really what COVID was and how it was spread, and how fast it was going to spread. We were seeing countries be completely collapsed by it, right? And we all assumed the worst, I think, and there's still a long road ahead of us, but back then it was scarier in terms of like the business aspect, like what are we going to do as a business, right? So I think, the bottom line was that we looked at what our resources were and what we could do to make it work. So the online store with the curbside is what we decided to do, because we could control how the jars were sanitized, who was filling them, who was taking, what precautions to make sure their hands were clean, and what they were doing on their day-to-day. Like, we had team members that were, really dedicated to the process to say like, okay, I'm going to go home. I'm just going to go home. I'm going to go to the store. If I'm working with you, I'm going to make sure, this is what I'm going to do to protect you. And this is how we're going to protect each other and the customers, right? So for many weeks, we functioned just a curbside pickup, Yeah. So the whole process basically, from start to finish is like, I'll walk you through it. So say somebody drops off a jar. Okay. So they drop off the jar in the container outside. That container is, then we know it's like a contaminated container. We treat it like that. Okay. So then one of the team members will come out, grab that container, bring it straight downstairs to the sanitizer. So it goes directly into the sanitizer, high temp heated area. We sanitize everything. We're a public health certified location, and our team is also food handler certified, all that jazz. So they're all very aware of how to maintain the proper procedures. So yeah, nothing gets kind of dropped along the way. It goes straight directly to the sanitizer and doesn't come back outside until it's been sanitized and dried properly. So The team wash their hands like, I can't even tell you probably how many times they wash their hands, but I can tell you we go through a lot of cloths. Yeah, and so that's basically the procedure, and then once it's been sanitized, then it can come back up into the mainstream. No, honestly, so if people bring in their own jars, the system ends up being that we get them to go wash their hands and wash the outsides of their jars. And it's really a very quick process. It doesn't take long, it takes 20 seconds, honest. And the team often will go over and help them do it to make sure that it gets done properly, A, and B, just to make the process easier and not feel so daunting or time consuming for the customer. And yeah, we can have people in and out of there within 10 minutes or so. Usually it's quite an efficient process. And we do limit how many people are in the store. So the team are very mindful of how to keep the flow going quickly, so that people can still get the great interaction they're used to with us, and the one-on-one conversation and the fun, but they also get to look around, and it's not we don't have people waiting too long then. I really need to commend the team for going in there during sometimes some pretty dark days, I think, where we weren't sure if things were going to work out or how they were going to work out, and just living that entrepreneurial spirit and that team spirit that the Nickel Refillery is really known for. I just really want to thank the team, because we wouldn't be here without them either. So.